On this day, 24th of October, 1648, the Peace of Westphalia was signed. The Peace of Westphalia ended the 30 Years' War, 80 Years' War, and the wars of religion that had been burning throughout what was then the Holy Roman Empire, which killed 8 million people. Many of these 8 million didn't die directly as a result of conflict. Many of them died from disease, because of famines, and because of all the disasters that followed the various wars and battles. The 80 Years' War was the war between the Spanish and the Dutch. So the United Provinces, or the Dutch Republic, was recognized by Spain as being independent. An 80-year war, 1648. This is the very same war that Elizabeth I had been involved in way back when she had been queen. And at this time, Louis XIV was on the throne, the Sun King. So he, the King of Sweden, the Holy Roman Emperor, the Pope, as well as the representatives of the Dutch Republic and the Swiss Confederation, and various other polities within the Holy Roman Empire were being represented. So the reason that Westphalia and the peace that it entailed is important even now is because we now see this as the beginning of the Westphalian system. And that means that each nation within its own borders is sovereign, and no other country should or can interfere in the internal affairs of that said country. The reason they did this was because for 30 years, various countries have been getting involved in wars because they were interfering in the internal politics of another country or another polity. So one place would say, we are Roman Catholic and we're going to burn the Protestants. A Protestant power up the road would say, no you're not, and they would invade, a war would happen, another Catholic power would come in to aid that Catholic power, another power would come in to aid the Protestant power, and the war would spread. Funnily enough, France, although being Catholic, was allied with the Protestants, with Sweden, with the Dutch, and with the various others like Prussia and other smaller Protestant states in what is now Germany. And the only reason they were on the side of the Protestants was because they hated the Habsburgs, and so they were willing to wage war against fellow Catholics on the side of Protestants just to give the Holy Roman Emperor a bloody nose. So this was a bit of a tangled mess, and the 80 Years' War had been going on for a very long time and had also had a religious character to it, the Dutch being Calvinist, the Spanish being Catholic, and even though the Spanish had theoretically said that they would be willing to allow Protestantism to endure in what is now the Netherlands, the Dutch weren't having any of that. They didn't trust the Spanish. Originally, it was what is now Belgium that was the Protestant centre of Holland, or the Netherlands. During the war, the Protestants had fled from what is now Belgium up to what is now the Netherlands, because it was more defensible. And so over the years, what is now Netherlands became the Calvinist Netherlands that we know. And Protestants in the south vanished because they all went north. Also during these 80 years, the Dutch Republic had become quite powerful. a massive navy with ports and trading centers all around the world. They were already established in what is now Indonesia, so the Dutch East Indies. They were established in India, around the Cape, in the Caribbean, the North American continent. So the Dutch had been doing a lot. They've been busy bees. And they were quite powerful and wealthy. It doesn't help that it also helped that they stole a lot of silver and gold from the Spanish ships that were carrying bullion back to Spain. They stole a lot. So they're doing very well. So the Spanish need this to end because the Spanish were not coming out of this very well. On top of that, Spain had been at war with France, and that war still went on for a while until the Treaty of the Pyrenees a year later. And 30 years war that had been going on and had been a complete disaster. It had been decided that this needed to end. So, on this day, they signed all these various treaties. All of the various agreements had come together. Switzerland was recognized as an independent confederation outside of the Holy Roman Empire, which it had de facto been for a while now, but it was recognized. And the Pope wasn't very happy with his agreement because it gave up his authority over Protestant Europe. He did not like that, and he called it an abomination, and I don't think he believed it would last, but it did. So the whole premise of recognizing the sovereignty of a government within its borders, this is something that caught on and became eventually a part of international law. It is something on which the United Nations depends. The whole point of the United Nations is that it's like a trade union for nation states, or states, you could say, even because many of them aren't nations. And because of that, borders don't change without consent of everyone, which is what makes it very difficult to change borders. It means that interference inside a country is also very difficult, although it hasn't always been the case. We've seen recently even various countries getting involved in other countries despite them not wanting them to be involved in them. We've seen this in the last century, and we've seen it even before. We saw the Vietnamese get rid of the Khmer Rouge. We've seen the Americans get rid of Saddam and the Taliban. We've seen the Soviets get involved in Afghanistan as well, way before, as well as interfering in Hungary, Czechoslovakia. So it hasn't stopped interference, but it has become a theoretical value that the UN and international law has depended on. And many people look back to the Peace of Westphalia as the beginning, the kernel around which all of this idea has come about. So, on this day, the 24th of October 1648, the Peace of Westphalia was signed, meaning that Europe, for a moment, would be at peace, and the beginning of a tenet of international law was established. If you like these videos, subscribe, comment, like, and come back tomorrow for more.